Hey, how's it going, everybody? We are back from CBSI with another themed Top 5 list, and I am joined by the nicest guy in comics down below me there, Peter Renna of Dollar Bin Digging and many other things. I'm Mike Morello. I do Cover Fire and Cover Tunes, and we do all kinds of other stuff on the site as well. And we are also brought to you by Tales from the Flip Side podcast channel. Tons of stuff on both the website, CBSI, that's comicbookinvest.com, as well as Tales from the Flip Side's YouTube channel. Content every day. It's free. We are here just because we love this stuff and we like nerding out about it. That's just sort of what it is. So this week's theme is Walking Dead variants. And we're going to talk just a little bit about Walking Dead in general in just a second. But if you want to learn a little bit more about any of these books, please head over to comicbookinvest.com and check out the full text list done by CBSI's own Ben C. He puts a lot of time into this list every week, and he's given us another great one this week that Peter and I are going to go over for you. Yeah. But Walking Dead's an interesting franchise in that it was sort of hit like a juggernaut because the show did so well. The comic also had a really great cult following before that, and they kind of fed off of each other. A lot of the early issues of the series were really rare and low printed, in the single thousands on some of those issues. And for like number 1 and number 19 and some of the big guns, they fetched some pretty huge money for a while. It was tough to get a number 1 for less than like $2.5–3 grand, even raw, for a couple of years there when the series was really at its height. And then the series kind of jumped the shark a little bit, and it went a little too long in the tooth. It kind of upset some people. A lot of people stopped watching it, and you started to see the prices kind of trickle down. And then all of a sudden, they just sort of all tanked, kind of all at once about a year ago. Whereas now you could get a number 1 for in the hundreds, $700, $800, $900 for a raw, which is a pretty crazy drop considering the heights that this book once had. However,
you could still get raws, really, like not, they weren't all graded, through all this.
That's true.
There aren't a lot.
That's true. And there were only a couple of thousand copies, right? Wasn't it like, geez, I can't remember what the number is, but it's really low.
It was under 10,
I used to know the number. Yeah, I think it's in the single thousands. I think it's like 5,000 copies or something insane like that. It's really low. Either way, maybe lower than that. But regardless, the one caveat is that this series still has an enormous legion of fans, and that seems to be clear every time some new little nugget hits the market. So we just got the Negan book, the Return of Negan Lives, the Negan Lives book a couple of weeks ago, and man, yet again, just exploded and flew off the shelves. And we're going to talk a little bit about one of these variants tonight. But so it's clear that there's still a huge fan base for it. And Ben says it on the website, and I agree. It has the feel of the Spawn fan base that will constantly go haywire for these books till the end of time. So maybe Walking Dead has lost its general viewing public, sort of the normal non-comic booky kind of person may have kind of jumped ship, but the people who have loved this from its fledgling days all the way through the show definitely still want their comics. And there's also some news out of San Diego as well that there's going to be another season of the show and some movies and all kinds of other stuff coming. So it's definitely not dead. There's definitely life left in Walking Dead. I abandoned the show after like season 5. Maybe season 4 even.
I went a little longer.
I never watched Fear the Walking Dead either because I heard it was horrendous at first, and then apparently it got good, even better than the original series. So I don't know. That's just me. I avoided number 1s like the plague because I had that inkling in the back of my head that book was going to kind of tank at some point. Not that I'm some I don't know, savant and knew the future, but it just felt like the way the show was headed. It felt like the books couldn't possibly keep the prices that they were at.
Not that price. Unfortunately, it'll always be a key. Like it'll always be a modern key, Walking Dead 1, regardless of the show, because of what it is and what it turned Image into, from what Image was to what kind of Image is now. Like that book is still kind of a touchstone of some sort that you would still want. But some of those prices got ridiculous. Like it can't maintain that.
And I'm gonna give it even more credit than that. I'm gonna say that it is the book that maybe even saved modern comics in a way that has changed the way people view buying what they think is the next Walking Dead #1. I hear that phrase all the time. What's the next Walking Dead #1? What's the next huge book that's going to hit so hard that I can make thousands of dollars off of it? And it's because of the phenomenon really that was this series.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because the series storyline did not follow the show storyline. There were characters in the show that didn't exist in the comic. There were deaths in the comic that didn't happen in the show for many, many seasons forward, or maybe not at all. So I mean, it was weird that it had what it had, but it definitely did change the view of the buying public on comics. People trying to speculate on what they thought the next Walking Dead would be. And now that's true speculation, trying to figure out what is the next thing that people are really going to want to get their hands on. What's the next thing people are really going to want to drop big money on? Yeah. And so as a result, I think this started all of that, at least in my view.
Like you said, there's still fans out. Like, even though the show may not be as popular as it once was, there are still a lot of buyers for this stuff. Like, again, Ben putting the Spawn buyers, like prices. Because I mean, this Negan Lives book, which I wasn't expecting it, and wasn't expecting this to sell like it has, but they had the silver, which I think was 2 per store that people were moving. They had the gold, which had 1 per store, that also was selling very well. And then they had this red foil, which I don't even know how it's released or how people have it, but this thing sells ridiculous.
It does. And I don't know, there's been a lot of conjecture about where this thing came from and why some stores got it and others didn't, or where it came from. It didn't seem like it was a con giveaway. Maybe it was meant to be a con giveaway, or not giveaway, but a con exclusive. And that it never made it to whatever the con was, because the con didn't happen. And then maybe they just sent them to stores. I mean, I know that you and I talked on one of our shows about how all of a sudden stores just happened to get those Silver Surfer Black 5 1 in 200 variants out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. Yeah.
It may have been one of those kinds of things where certain stores qualified in some weird way for this book. Maybe they did it as an incentive. We're not really sure. If we do ever find out, we'll let you know. But as of now, it is not definite where it came from. Yeah, not at all. So, I mean, anyway, that's our diatribe on Walking Dead. Let's get into the list. We're going to start at number 5. And it is an interesting one that I don't see very often. And there's actually something about it I didn't know until Peter did the graphics for it. But Walking Dead number 50, the Eric Larsen variant. And this apparently is a wraparound. I've never seen it out of a bag and board, so I didn't realize it was a wraparound. So there's your full art right there. It's rare enough that I've never seen a copy outside of the bag and board. And I've not been interested enough in Walking Dead to take one off a wall and pull it out of the bag. So I wouldn't have known that. But a fun cover. It sort of has that kind of 90s Larsen feel to it. And it's one of those things where it was out before the book really got hot. I mean, this was still sort of in those right around when the book was just about to start to hit. It was pretty tough to find. There's a couple here and there on eBay. Not a terribly expensive book, but yet still one that Walking Dead fans really try to get, because it is during that lower print run side of things. Yeah. So that one hits the bottom of our list. We start from bottom and go up to the top. And then as we get into number 4, we start to see some of the books that a lot of people might start to recognize.
A little more recent.
Number 4 is the Pink. Yeah, a little bit more recent. So Walking Dead 171, the Pink signature variant. If you don't know what that means, I think we have a blow up of the signature, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
There it is. So that's what you're looking for there. Yeah, secret variant. Yeah, I think there was, I remember when these came in, there were a couple of books that did this. I want to say maybe Oblivion Song did it.
They had the frog. Oblivion Song had that little frog.
That's what it was. On the cover. Okay, yeah.
But there were other pink signatures.
So there were a couple of other pink signatures as well. I can't remember what they were now off the top of my head, but I remember when these came in, and I seem to remember them being like 1 out of 10-ish.
Yeah, I think that was
I don't know if
people guessed.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's ever been confirmed that it's a 1 in 10, but the stores that I saw that got them got like 1 or 2 copies, and most of them were 10 or 20 copies for their stores. So, $40, $50 sales on this book. pretty consistently since it came out, and it's never really gone down. It does feature the first appearance of Princess, so it's sort of a mini key, if you will. So there's a couple of reasons to hunt this book down, but really it's just that pink signature that you're looking for. So keep your eye out for that.
Too. I think they might even jump ahead with her coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then next up, number 3, we've got a pretty rare one. It's a 1 in 200 for issue 100. Now, I say a rare variant because it's a 1 in 200, but stores ordered a ton of issue 100, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So while a 1 in 200 ratio seems crazy, it's really not all that crazy. I know a lot of stores that ordered a lot of copies of this one.
There were a lot of covers for this.
This was the time when Walking Dead was probably the hottest, right around issue 100. This is when things started to go really, really nuts. Mm-hmm. And this was sort of, I don't want to say it was a money grab, but let's face it, you got your hottest book and you do a 1 in 200 on it at issue 100. That certainly seems like you're trying to get some extra money out of the book.
There were a lot of covers too for this. I mean, in McFarlane,
there were a lot of covers.
I mean, this is the Otley, and then they made the Otley 1 in 200. A ton of covers. Like if you go and look at a list, you got pages to scroll.
Yep. Although this one, I guess, supposedly got given out at New York Comic Con. Maybe only got given out at New York Comic Con. There's some talk about that as well. It's still a winner though. This is still $150 to $200 book, depending on what you're looking at grade wise. Maybe even more if you hit an auction where you got it.
So it's got to be related to
it does have
comicology. So maybe there was some sort of promotion.
I assume they had a booth. Yeah, maybe they had a booth or something at NYCC and gave it away there. I've actually never seen a copy of this in person. So
me either.
I don't – I mean, I've been to Walker Stalker shows, and there's always tons of books in the room, but I've never seen this one. So speaking of a book I've never seen, the next one, number 2, is – a book that I assume a lot of people will never see, and it is the last wine variant for number 1. Pete, you did a little digging on this. What'd you find about this?
Yeah, apparently, like this, I don't know if this came with or was eligible to get if you bought like a case of wine or something. I don't know what Ben was saying, but I didn't know that they had sold Walking Dead wine and you would get a comic in some fashion with these. But this book, I didn't even know existed till I saw this list. Till Ben put it out there.
Neither did I.
And then looking for pictures, that's why I found out a little bit. I'm like, really? There's, again, you can see there's multiple different bottles of wine, but I guess if you bought the wine, you could get this book, and it's selling, pretty well.
I mean, I have to say, depending on how this thing was shipped in the box, I can't imagine that these things survived real well. And actually, I'm going to take a pause, and I'm going to look over in the chat. Kev's Collectibles, thanks for joining us. Anthony, Kent. Anthony, you bring up, and actually Kent, both of you bring up where the red foil supposedly comes from. Some news that I hadn't heard. I guess the red foil for Negan Lives came from diehard fans that had to follow Instagram or Twitter and or to Skybound employees. So obviously a pretty tough book to get. I didn't see one at any of my shops. So, and I don't know any of my friends that got them, but that's actually kind of cool, right? If you're still a fan and you're still following and commenting on social media and you're showing that you're still showing support for the show, even after it kind of lost a lot of its fan base, that shows that you're a real fan and maybe you deserve something a little special. And so Image gave him something special, and that's kind of cool. Actually, I really kind of dig that. And I don't dig that they're flipping them on eBay. They should be keeping them, but I don't know. It was like that Stan Lee variant that people started to sell, or the Galaxy's Edge employee variant.
I think there was only that one for the Galaxy's Edge. I only ever saw that one person try to sell it. I don't think I saw any other.
Just one for sale. That was it.
That was that one that somebody wanted like $3,500 or $2,500 for the Galaxy's Edge one. That's the only one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it did sell. I'm not sure. I think it made the hot list that week because of such a high sale, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, this book, that book, the Negan Lives book, wasn't all that different from the silver foil or the gold foil. So I could see not being really enticed to keep it. But even still, I guess apparently that's where it came from. So, but back to the last wine variant.
It's a cool cover.
it is a cool cover, very different than some of the other stuff that we've seen in the series. And at the same time, also, you had to order a whole case of wine to get it. It probably didn't arrive in great shape unless they put it, I don't know, unless they put it in like a CGC case in there. I don't see it for surviving rattling bottles inside a cardboard box, but what do I know?
Yeah.
And yeah, a bunch of copies have sold. I say a bunch of copies, a handful of copies, about half a dozen copies have sold in the last few months for around 400-ish for this book. So we're ticking up in price just a little bit as we move up the list. But 400 is no joke for a variant like this, for a reprint of issue 1.
Oh, what's his Anthony gave
one of the many reprints of number 1. Is that a full? Let's see, Anthony.
So it's going to be included in the box.
In the box didn't happen. Variant artists got comp copies. Thank you, Anthony, very much. As you can tell, I am not a Walking Dead collector, so I go on what I read. But that you obviously are a fan, and you know this stuff, and that's pretty awesome info.
Very
Thank
helpful.
you. So I guess it never. So maybe they are mint because they never made it inside the wine box.
But it still seems it would be hard to find. Like, doesn't seem like there's still a lot out there.
Yeah. And even Ben says he imagined copies went out to people that didn't order the wine, probably employees and things like that as well. So,
yeah.
But apparently they all went out that way. So maybe they're actually in halfway decent shape. It is a cool cover. And it's definitely one I've never seen. I don't anticipate seeing very many copies in my lifetime anyway. But the undisputed number 1 is clear. It's the one that still consistently sells for the most. And it is the Lucille variant for issue 100. So we're back to issue 100. Again, another issue that had a ton of variants, but this was the winner. This was the one everybody wanted.
Yeah.
Again, as I said before, this was the pinnacle of collecting Walking Dead. This is when it was at its most popular, or at least the beginning of its most popular time frame, when raws of number 1 were $2,500, $3,000. And this book hit right at that time. And it was, it was rare, tough to get.
Yeah.
I actually have seen a couple of copies of this. It's a pretty expensive book. I'm trying to think of what the last copies have sold for. I was trying to look that up real fast. Let's see what the most recent copies have sold for since we're on here real fast.
Yeah, you go ahead and look it up. I never saw this guy. I never saw this book like live and in person. Granted, I don't go to a lot of cons and shows. I don't know. I just like going to shops more than going to shows. But I've not seen this book. I've seen it online, and the ones I've seen online have fetched, or at least were asking, way more than I would be willing to pay. Because it's not just I like The Walking Dead. I've kind of dropped off, like as Mike mentioned too. Like I kind of stopped watching a little later than him. I think I stopped right before the Whisperers kind of really came a thing. I think I saw Jesus go, and I was like, oh, they got rid of Jesus. I don't know. I was kind of disappointed with that. And I think that was the last show that I watched. And if that spoiled it for anybody, well, you're like 2 years behind, because I don't think I've watched a show in like 2 years. But yeah, all I remember, this book was pricey, and I assume that it probably still is.
It is. It's around $500 or so for 9/8, $450, $500. There's somebody asking just under $1,000 for a signed one, an SS. It's a 9/6 though. So I mean, I guess it sort of depends on the day and the popularity. This book was, if I remember correctly, going for more back then when it was super, super hot. But even still, the fact that this book still gets $400 to $500 for a issue that had so many variants, from a very polarizing character that some people thought was kind of nonsense and other people really loved. I still find it interesting that this book gets that much money, but it's definitely the one that sells the most. It's the one that sort of became known as the Walking Dead variant to get.
Absolutely.
And see, 100 is big issue. First Negan Death of Glenn, not an incentive. Anthony, what's not an incentive?
I think that was from way before. I think it might have been the Otley.
For the Otley.
The Otley might not have been 1 in 200. It might have been something else.
Oh, that it was just that NYCC giveaway. Yeah, I think, and Ben does mention that in his article as well, that it was marketed, or it was what's the word I'm looking for? Solicited, I guess, as a 1 in 200, and it didn't end up being that. I guess it ended up being held back. The Comixology one, I think, is what we're talking about for 100. Which was not a 1 in 200. In fact, it was an NYCC variant. A Comixology exclusive, which was limited to 500 copies. There we go. Very cool. So But back to the Lucille variant, this is definitely one that was on a lot of collectors' radars, even if we weren't Walking Dead fans. I remember trying to hunt for this book, see if I could get myself a decently cheap copy, but that never happened. I mean, the book went haywire pretty quickly. And I never really saw it go down. And clearly it still hasn't gone down. It looks like you can maybe catch one here and there in and around the 200-ish range if you're lucky. The prices are kind of all over the place on solds. There's one that sold that was a low grade for $113. There was a raw that sold for $300, a couple at $350, one at $400, and then a couple at $450 and $500. So they range pretty widely depending if they're signed or not signed, 9.8 or not 9.8. But they're all over the place. I know this still pretty volatile
again. I think this spiked again once the actual Glenn bit came up in the show. I think this also had a bit of a hit at that time. Like it kind of popped.
Yeah, it definitely did.
They covered it. It's like, okay, they did it. Now what are we gonna do? They're not gonna remake the Walking Dead show, I don't think, anytime soon. So it's a hard to find variant. So if you're a collector of comics, it's unrelated to the show and unrelated to anything the show. The show part's done. So if you want it for your own collection, then you can get one, because apparently, they're up and down. They're out there.
Yeah, you just got to be patient and wait for your copy or wait for a raw to come out. A lot of them are slabbed, but there's a couple of raws that have gone in the last couple of months. So if this is a book you've had your eye on for a while, this you might just want to kind of bide your time and wait for the right price. Yeah. So that's number one, mostly because of the hotness of it. Since it came out all the way through now, it still sells well. But that's not the only books that we have on the list. We, like we always do, added a couple extras this week. And one that I remember was the Here's Negan.
No, this was Ben's first.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Pardon me, Ben's honorable mention. I'm so sorry, Ben. Ben, forgive me, Ben. The Walking Dead 101, the Ghost variant. I actually love this cover.
I do too. I want one. Like I don't love Walking Dead. Most of mine are gone, but once I saw this, and I've seen it before, but I've forgotten about it. Now seeing it again, I want one, because it just straight up reminds me. I don't know. Maybe it's also Jackie Brown's been on cable a lot lately, but it just Pam Grier. It's just all I see. I see coffee. Like that's all I see with this cover.
Yeah,
I see coffee.
I can't unsee that. That's definitely what it is. That is hot. now I kind of want one of these.
Exactly. We're gonna have to fight for
it. I definitely remember seeing this when it was a thing. But it's been out of my mind just because I kind of pushed Walking Dead off to the side for my own collecting purposes. But this really was a great release. This was really, really cool way to do this. Retro 70s blaxploitation film poster kind of feel. Obviously Foxy Brown sort of vibe to it. But definitely a cool book. So there's that one. And then had to show it one more time. Yeah. And then we got this Negan blind box variant, which this one was one that went instantly up. You had to buy a fairly expensive blind box to even get the chance to get this book. I seem to remember the blind box being like a $300 MSRP.
Yeah.
And they instantly went up to like $400, $500, $600 a box because people wanted to try to get this Negan variant out of it. It still sells really well. It's still like a $200-$300 book raw. So, but it's just sort of the preview, the Here's Negan preview, and you can only get it in that blind box.
Yeah, because it didn't even have the whole Here's Negan, right? It was just like a few of the, what was it? The image preview book had those little like 2 pages or 1 page of like the story, and you had to keep getting those image previews to get the Here's Negan story. And I think this only had part of it. And then there was a hardcover, I think, that came out that had a red version of this same book.
Yep, absolutely right. Yep. And I mean, there were other cool books in that blind box. It wasn't like it was the only book, but but so there's the box again. And I can't remember how many books were in there, but I don't know, maybe been like 20 books in that box, something like that. And there was definitely other cool stuff, but nothing nearly that cool.
Yeah.
What else we got? Is that all we got?
Out of this box? No, because out of this box we had one more. Just kind of give examples, because they had that whole 50th anniversary.
Right.
Well, no, not out of this box, but with the 15th anniversary of the blind bag.
The blind bags. Yeah, the blind bags. That's right. There was a lot of these variants in the blind bags. There was a Negan variant in the blind bags. There was this Michonne variant. There was a couple of others. I think there were 4 or 5 of them that were like pretty sought after. But this was the one, the J. Scott Campbell Michonne cover, that was probably the hottest one out of the gate. Unfortunately, prices have really tanked on this book, and they're really not worth a whole lot. But they were for a while. And this is one of those books, one of those watch outs, like this kind of stuff can happen to any of us on these books. They got hot. They went for $50, $100 for the rarest ones. And now I think you can even get the rarest version for like $15, $20. Yeah. It's really not a tough.
Yeah, it depends on now it's your choice. It's not, even though like some of the variants were harder to get, because there were 4 versions. I mean, you had the trade, and then the Virgin of the same colored cover, the black and white, and I think the hardest was this sketch, which was just the black and white without the trade, and that again was again, like Mike said, that was selling for a lot back in the day. Now I guess interest has waned, but this is still a reprint of issue 19, and that's still a book people want. Outside of number 1, number 19 is probably issue 2,
the next
regular book.
Yeah, this one, or the Governor is the other big one, I guess. I can't remember what issue that is off the top of my head, but those are the ones that, but Michonne was the big one, and this was a cool way to get it. And there's a lot of Campbell fans, and Campbell fans like to collect sets of Campbell. So this was a way where you could get 4 of essentially the same cover in different colorings and different sort of pencil/inks. But yeah, this was the one, and I remember it was tough to touch under $100 for a while. And now it's really not all that tough to get. Still fairly rare, but it is what it is. A couple new people joined the chat. Thanks for joining us, Paul, Doc, George. Good to have you guys in here tonight. Thank you. And to Anthony, thank you very much specifically for your help and information. Very, very helpful. I love it when there are people in the chat that are fans of the thing we're talking about. I usually am. But in this particular case, I'm not going to lie. It's not like I'm going to sit here and say Walking Dead's my favorite thing in the world, because it's just not. I definitely appreciate it for what it did for comics, but it's not. It just was never my thing.
Yeah, agreed. And we try to know as much as we can about everything, but nobody can be an expert on everything. And I appreciate, and I did enjoy Walking Dead. I'm still curious of what they're going to do, like with these Rick movies that might be coming, and like what they're going to do in the future. But
yeah, me too.
The week to week, there's so many comic book themed and comic book adaptation shows these days. I can't keep up with all of them. I don't think anybody can.
No, I know.
We are spoiled. Like these days, comic fans
we really are
with the amount of options we have for shows, streaming, movies. Like we are spoiled. So it's an embarrassment.
It's true. We really are. Yep, there's no doubt about it. But so we thank you, people like Anthony, for coming in and giving us your knowledge. It's we don't pretend to know everything, and we need you guys around to help us out sometimes. So thanks for popping in and taking us to school. It's taking us to school a little bit tonight. That's good. I like it. Again, as a reminder, go to comicbookinvest.com. That's CBSI, and check out all of the free content. There's some great stuff every week. We've got from Peter's Dollar Bin Digging to my cover tunes and Cover Fire to Chris's Rumor Has It, obviously the Hot 10 list, which is the Hot 10 list, Topher's True Firsts, Diesel City Dreams. Man, you name it. There's such great articles hitting
Wednesday one, the website. Back 9. There's tons.
The Wednesday one, yeah, absolutely. And
Chris's other one.
Yeah, Fisherman's Tale, which is really, really cool storytelling. Really love it. And then, of course, check us. Yeah, yeah.
And then, all day, but
yeah, there's so many. There are so many, and there's so many great things going on over on the Tales from the Flip Side YouTube channel as well. There's new content every day. There's the main podcast on Mondays, but you got everything from Nico's Weekend Update to obviously our Theme Top 5 to 3 Comic Monty on Fridays, and Global Comic Safari, which if you have not checked, you have to check that out. These guys are paving the way toward a new niche in comic books that has been around for a while, and it's really starting to catch fire now. And these guys are in on the ground floor. So check them out. They have tons of knowledge. And then obviously Vintage Voyage on Sundays and plenty of other shows. There's some new stuff about to hit as well. So keep your eye out on that. And as well as on comicbookinvest.com. And with that, we leave you all for the night. We'll see you next week for another Themed Hot 5. I am Mike. That is Peter, and we're out of here.